Hey everyone, welcome to the first inaugural episode of Merch Disrupted, where we dive into the future of branded merchandise. With the print on demand market set to soar past $100 billion by 2035, we're here to unpack the trends, tech, and ideas driving this revolution. Join me, Alex Phelan, each week as I talk with industry leaders about how we'll get there, the challenges we'll face, and the opportunities for those bold enough to disrupt the status quo. Let's reshape the merch world together. All right, so today we have a very good friend of mine, somebody who has also been in print on demand for as long, actually, I think longer than me, and is truly one of the OGs of the print on demand space. So very happy to have with us Chris Robbins, founder and head of Custom Color Solutions and head of print on demand at District Photo. Chris, welcome to
Alex,
the podcast.
thank you. Very nice introduction. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, yeah, so Chris, you have a really interesting background. I mean, we've known each other for a really long time, and going back to like the Teespring days, but I think it'd be great, if we could start with just kind of like how you got into print on demand, kind of your background and your story. I know we're focused on the future in this podcast, but you have a really unique and interesting background.
It People always ask me, "What do you do now?" And I say, "Oh, I sell coffee mugs." But no, the genesis of it goes back to honestly, I was a floor trader on New York Stock Exchange. Had an opportunity to work for a private equity fund. Ended up running the private equity fund, and one of our investments happened to be a company out in Las Vegas called Crystal Impressions. What's fascinating about it is when I ended up taking it over back in 2006. It was doing business with this company called Photo This, and Photo This came to us because what we offered was this what we called photo crystals, and I was introduced to a world called photo gifting. And long story short, Photo This was using us to help serve people would upload their pictures at Walgreens and CVS, and they would choose a mouse pad or a coffee mug or a crystal, a 3D crystal engraved with their image in it. Anyhow, that connection that we had with Crystal Impressions and Photo This ultimately led to an introduction to a gentleman by the name of Al Steinman, who ran District Photo. District Photo during those years really led, and Al was responsible for the transition from analog to digital. District Photo was doing, you mail in your photos, your rolls, and then you get your photos 5-6 days later. Al saw the opportunity with Photo This, and District Photo ended up acquiring Photo This, which led to my introduction to Al. And then go through 2006 to 2014 when I sold Crystal Impressions. I went straight to Al with this plan, and I said, Al, I've been in this market. I think there's a great opportunity for District Photo to get out, not just do photo gifting, but there's this whole new era of technology that would allow us to take these products and put them on platforms and direct to consumer sites, and that ultimately led to the evolution of Custom Color as a go-to-market brand for District Photo. But the reality was, it was fun because District Photo was doing this and had been doing it for years before and perfected the process, and allowed me to use that unique process they had to start to go after the markets that today we call print on demand. So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
mean,
the story, Alex. But
well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of years in that compressed story, but I mean, 2006, I mean, this was like, gosh, I mean, 7, 8 years before really, I mean, Teespring when we started, it was like 2011. Things really started heating up around 2013, 2014. That's when a lot of the big, kind of print on demand platforms today were formed. So, I mean, that's way before even like, direct to garment printing and all these other things that we leveraged in the early days came around. So were you guys actually doing like dye sub mugs on demand quantity of one and at that time?
So District Photo was, so they were doing the dye sub mugs at that point. Obviously the line was pretty narrow. It was the mugs, mouse pads, mostly dye sub.
Yeah.
I think they introduced blankets and then started to get into some direct print like canvases in 2011, somewhere in that range. I don't remember the exact dates. But the whole time it was supporting what is personalized items. It was a picture, and it was just and how I got traction was in 2009. I started doing some connections, some API. Again, API. It was such a new term for
That was
me.
a very foreign term at that time. Yeah.
And in '09, I did some API connections with some large promo firms, BDNA and others, and we started to support at Crystal Impressions employee programs.
Mm.
And that just took off. I mean, it took off. So it's all individual member names. It was a
Yeah.
name, how many years of service. So it really was, we were doing print on demand. I believe, and I could be, if someone wants to correct me and do the history check, but I remember when I took over Crystal Impressions, I remember saying, this industry, the promotional products industry, is whoa, was it? I felt dated. Like they had setup charges, they had run charges, they had reorder fees. And I
Hmm.
believe Crystal Impressions in '06, we eliminated all those additional fees. We said, hey, listen, we want to do one offs. There's not going to be a setup fee. It can be, we don't have a copy change fee, so you can have different images. I will tell you this, the only reason that we got to that level was that at the time, District Photo was teaching us how to do individual one offs. And that lesson I learned back then enabled me to get into all these big programs that were all one-offs. Again, all print on demand, but we
Yeah.
weren't calling it that. We were calling it programs. But it was just fascinating. And then I kept that connection with District Photo because we were a supplier of theirs. Right up to the day. Well, I didn't own Crystal Impressions. I was a principal and I ran it for a number of investors, but we successfully turned it around, sold it in 2014. But everything I learned from that, I went to Al Steinman with this plan. I literally wrote the business plan. I was driving from New York to DC, and went over it, and I would say within 6 months we implemented it. So
Wow.
all those lessons, Alex, and I know you've been through it too, but those lessons were, hey, we can serve one-offs, and if we do it really well and we have a scalable solution on the back end, which District had, I think there's a great place for us to go and really go after the broader market as technology. Shopify. I mean, talk about an amazing opportunity for all of us. Like what Shopify's done for us, it's incredible. Oh,
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, and I sort of realized I don't know, some years into my print on demand career that in the world of photo products and like paper products, in like paper products, they use the term like web to print, and I guess like in the photo world they say like photo gifting, and so like that infrastructure of being able to produce thousands of physical items with variable data, which is really core to the whole print on, that is essentially, the foundational piece of print on demand, right? Kind of already existed in those other types of products because you had, printing technology and, technology that could support the physical product in a way where obviously direct to garment had to go through a lot of R&D and iterations to get to anything close to that. Um, so so District already had this manufacturing infrastructure in place to basically produce thousands of one-off photo gift type items. And how long had they been doing one-offs in photo products? Do you know?
believe they started. I want to say it was the acquisition of Snapfish, which sort of which allowed them to monetize the digital image onto items.
Yeah.
And I think it was '03 when it started, '03,
Wow.
'04. So the photo gifting space really it just took off. But fascinating thing is it left behind. I mean, I don't think Ritz camera, they were everywhere, left them
Mm,
behind. They didn't
right.
evolve into the digital. And there's a number of stories of failed companies that were huge in the photo market that were really doing, you think about a set of photos, you can't mix up 36 photos. The person wants those, these are my pictures, and
Right.
they want them, someone getting the wrong picture doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Even from 1950s and on, these companies were, it allowed them to perfect the ability of fulfilling a high volume of items. Because I mean, they were still doing millions and hundreds of millions of photos a year. But you imagine that system had to know which photos went to where and the
Right.
addresses and how to get them on. I mean, you
Right.
think it
Right.
just the whole system had been evolving for years. But I think for the sake of a discussion about disrupting district photo, absolutely disrupting the industry. They went to own 90% of the market share in photo gifting.
Wow.
Fuji was, was always a company that was a competitor. Fuji had a lot of other divisions, and they were focused on the paper they sold. They were focused on their imaging systems and medical. It was a huge company, and it really allowed District to sort of spread their wings. But the coolest story I have about District is when I went to meet them in '06, I'll never forget, or maybe it was '07, walking onto the floor, this huge floor in Beltsville, and they had one HP Indigo printer and a book press, and they're like, hey, we think this is going to be something,
Mm.
um we're this is our new photo book line. And think about one Indigo back in '06 or '07, probably $1 million.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then when I went back and I started to work for District, I remember going back on the floor and getting a tour, and I think they had 35 Indigos. And it just tells you
Wow.
how
Oh my gosh.
the photo book business just took off.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, that was really neat to see. So it'll kind of wrap the story up a little bit, Alex. What was amazing for me is I come from this business, in the promotional world. I've been doing programs. I've been learning all about distributor network, how it all works, what they're looking for. And so I come in with this plan. Hey, we're going to do this, and we can do this, and we're going to have all this technology, and we're going to power stores and everything. And what was fascinating was I started to work with some distributors, and like, well, but we need this and we want this. And I go back to District and I'd say, hey, how can we add, I'm just going to use this name, I'll use a North Face vest. And any way we can get a North Face vest on here and decorate it because they want to do a North Face vest. And it's a very big brush stroke scenario I'm explaining.
Sure. Sure.
But District looked at me and said, Chris, let's narrow your focus. Let's focus on these items. And they handed me spreadsheets with years of data. I mean, I love a good pivot table, Alex. I'm sure you do too. But the reality was, it allowed me to go back and say, hey, oh, I'm going to focus on these items because look, historically, this item, out of the hundreds of millions of items that they ship a year at District, this item's 80% of it. If
Right.
that item, if
Right.
that 80% of that item is selling into that channel, it damn well sure will sell well into, the channels that we're looking to expand in.
Yeah.
And it was just fascinating. So go ahead.
Yeah, and that's why I think the whole thing is so analogous to kind of the growth curve and the evolution of kind of what we consider to be print on demand today when you think about all the platforms that we all know and kind of that early phase in I don't know 2010 to 2015 and when platforms like my previous platform and Printful, Printify, Guten, all these platforms were kind of growing. We all learned that kind of the same thing very quickly that hey, yeah, there's all these products out there that people might want, but at the end of the day, like using apparel in that same example, your black, navy, red, heather gray, crew neck unisex t-shirt, is going to be, I don't know, over half your volume, right? And
Easily.
the black large unisex crew neck t-shirt might be like 20% of your total volume. And so, yeah, so I think a lot of the print on demand companies, or I would say all of the print on demand companies, optimized supply chains and manufacturing kind of around that model. And as you know, as two people who have been trying to kind of like bring this technology into the more traditional segments of branded merch, like promotional products, like licensed merch, where maybe you go into to a program, or one of these deals where they say, okay, well, we need these 200 items, from all over the spectrum. I think that's one of the key kind of like challenges to sort of bring the two together. And I think one of the things that I think distributors, licensed merch companies, these more traditional, team dealers, a lot of the more traditional merch companies, I believe will start to realize this too. One, I think there's a realization that, you know, print on demand and e-commerce are not optional. Like these are things that, in order to kind of stay relevant in the future, you at least need to have a solution for. And and some of them will really go all in and thrive in that model. But in order to, it's just a different way of thinking about things. So in that model, you're taking a smaller selection of products that you can provide great service, a great fulfillment experience, and kind of simplifying the physical product assortment. And then of course, I don't think that I'm not one of I used to think this way. I think because I came from a purely print on demand background, I was always kind of thinking like, oh, well, this is just a better way of doing things. Print on demand for sure is going to overtake the whole market. No, I think that your wholesale merch, and custom sourced products with higher MOQs, and when a client really wants a very specific item, and they're willing to pay for that, that's always going to exist. And I think the two can kind of coincide together, and play nice together.
Yeah, 100%. And you and I were chatting prior to getting on. And I think one element of print on demand is no matter what, it complements any site. So no matter if
Hmm.
it's a company store, if it's direct to consumer, um, any site that's out there, if I feel it's a disservice to their customers by not having at least an element of on demand. Because one, it obviously some of the items that I do are, it has a low barrier for the customer to purchase. It's a low cost item. Um, it has great decoration.
Hmm.
So it really is the content you get on it. It might not. So to me, it's not necessarily the product that's going to sell. It's the decoration or what's being put on it that really is going to be the driver of the sales. Um, Two, obviously, I hear a lot about sustainability. I think no matter what, our supply chains are already factoring that in, and yeah, we can use it as a value proposition to print on demand, and oh, it's sustainable, it's sustainable. But the reality is, every time we sell one item, we have one package, and so there's the pluses and minuses of it. However, no matter what, the evolution of print on demand, the idea that something can be personalized and put someone's name on it, that's the trick to it all. It's the idea that someone comes up with a design that a large subset of customers can see and that they can relate to. That to
Yep.
me is the exciting part about print on demand. Forget all the other noise we hear. I just think it's a lot of my partners come up with really good designs that add personalization, and they put it on an 11-ounce coffee mug. And I can tell you,
Hmm.
I sell millions of 11-ounce coffee mugs a year. And people say, well, it's old, it's stagnant. No, it's new to somebody who's getting it because it has a relevant design on it. I
Totally.
don't need the latest greatest tumbler to make a lot of sales. I'm just saying this as a 30,000 foot view of the industry. It's important to understand that it's not necessarily the item; it's what's being put on the item. And but every site should have a print on demand element. Every single site. I don't see why. Um, you know, I've talked to um, uh, um, the licensing world, and they're like, well, no, we don't want it. 5 years ago, they didn't want print on demand to them was so old that we're not using it. If we get to the point where um, we have 1,000 shirts left over, we'll just give them away, and
Right.
they were okay with it.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
funny
Yeah.
part is, all of a sudden now, Alex, they're saying, hey, wait a second, what a great thing to have is print on
Hmm.
demand. It's complementing. It's coming. Oh wait, people that can't go to the concert to get merch, they can also just order it, and we don't have to inventory, we don't have to staff, and it's finally making its way into it. But my point to all of it is, it's not necessarily the product, it's really coming up with a great design, and the fact that it's complemented by a lot of great items on a website. So the items I sell, they're best sellers, and we sell a ton of them, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the latest greatest. It's
Yeah, well, and I think you touched on two really important kind of disruptive forces in my opinion, and I'll kind of go back to the future if I will here, because going back to like because I really the thing I think that's so cool about your background is it is a it's analogous with what's happening now in other categories of product, like apparel and some of these other categories. And and so, when you found out about this incredible on-demand, one of one manufacturing capability that District had, you then brought that to all of these traditional platforms, and the platforms that kind of rallied around that, from a B2B standpoint, they said, "Oh wow, we didn't know that you could have an endless aisle of these types of products with no upfront costs, no inventory, none of the traditional friction points," which is a huge advantage in a B2B model. And then, of course, you know, I mean, going from, one Indigo to 30 Indigos, and, kind of the rate that District was able to capture, the photo market, and of all of those platforms that succeed shared in that success because they adopted that model. I think that's similar to what we see in the B2B world today with print on demand, where you have, these a lot of businesses, they just don't know that it's an option to sell or buy products this way. Where, oh wait, so I don't have to pay all this money up front. I don't have to have these things sitting around in inventory. I can just have a website up, either where my customers or my employees, can purchase this type of product. A lot of the branded merch businesses like promo distributors and decorators don't really know a lot about like the possibilities there. So that's kind of like disruptive force number one on the B2B side. And then the other thing you just touched on is kind of like on the consumer side. Consumers crave products that they have a deeper emotional connection to. And so, if I have this white coffee mug, like it serves its basic purpose for me to not spill coffee on myself and to be able to drink it, right? And not to look like an idiot trying to drink coffee out of my hands, right? But then if I then if I put, this on it, this is like a coffee shop that I really like in Portland. It's like, it's a place so I've now kind of upped the level of emotional connection. However, if all of a sudden I could put, my name or my son's name, or, something like related to, if now this has something that's much more personal to me and my family, even if it doesn't have a lot of meaning to anyone outside of maybe me or my immediate family, that's an even deeper emotional connection. And so that's where exactly what you just said, like the personalized products, being able to have, super niche, kind of variable data going on these physical products. That's another thing that, and similar to B2B, a lot of consumers don't know that that's possible. So when they see that that's possible, they're gonna give their $15 to $20 to that mug versus, just maybe the generic, one that they bought at the department store.
100%. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's the element of personalization. It's that it's mine. That's a powerful, and that's sales 101 in our industry, is the
Yeah.
fact that, hey, you can add the variable data. especially in promo. I I'm shocked, Alex, at how many phone calls I'll get and when I say, hey, free personalization is part of our key value proposition. Excuse me. And people will say, okay, but how much is it to add the names? And I'm like, there's no charge to it. And because they, a lot of times in the promotional products industry, a lot of people, I've had distributors think personalization is the logo. Like we're not
Right.
charging for the logo. And to this day, I mean, I've been doing quotes on you know company stores for the Proformas of the world, the Geigers, and they have our items on all their stores or a lot of their stores, and a lot of their reps still ask me, well, what's the drop ship fee? And it's amazing. There's some legacy terms that are happening in the industry that are finally making their way out because the greater portion of the larger suppliers, the legacy suppliers in there, the hits and the PCNAs and others, they're all you look at every year I go to the shows and every year you see more and more items that are available for print on demand. So it's happening, but it's just what I would say if I'm looking at doing this and then getting into print on demand as a part of an offering in the B2B space is I wouldn't necessarily jump on all the latest greatest because a lot of times you'll price yourself out. Yes, it's nice to have them on. It's nice to have they complement the others, but I would always say you need to have the low cost items that people generally, they don't mind spending $15 on, $10
Right.
on. You get something with their name on it, that thing's going to sit in their desk. It's not going to move. People are going to see every time they walk in a journal with their name on it. They're going to keep it. They're going to walk around with it. Their brand, if it's a company store and you work for Caterpillar, you're going to walk around with your notebook with your name on it. And
Right.
the Caterpillar brand's going to be seen everywhere. I mean, it's exciting. That to me is what excites me about the industry. Um,
Yeah.
is that item you have that you've been given or you've purchased with your name that might have a cult might be might have your company logo on it. You are going to walk around with it. You are going to keep it, and I promise you that your brand is going to get a ton of hits. A tote bag. Name of tote bags. You got your company name on it, your name on it, or some saying that you came up with. You're gonna walk around with it, but 5,000 people are gonna see that tote bag as you walk through the subway in New York City.
Right. Right.
That's the powerful stuff we do, and then it can be all done on demand. I just think that's the coolest thing in the world. I really do. But
Yeah.
we're finally getting to the point, Alex, and I think you have come into the market at a time where it's needed, like a proper, get myself in trouble here, but a proper platform that understands how I need to work. And that's something that because you understand that whole side of the business and you got the front end down, you've worked in the back end, but because you've done both, you know how a system needs to work. And that's what you guys have done is amazing. And how you can connect with us and it's easy. And yeah, it's amazing.
I don't know what company you're talking about. Not No, thanks. Thanks for the plug. But no, I mean, so it's kind of like related to the next question I was going to ask you, and you kind of partially answered it. But so if what advice would you give to a branded merch business? And I personally I like to say branded merch business as opposed to like decorator, distributor. So like,
Mhm.
there's these like very rigid definitions of types of entities in this space, and they're definitely not they're not binary at all. I mean, you have distributors that decorate, and you have decorators that offer third party promo products, and so there's a very it's definitely a spectrum. So I just like to say branded birch businesses. But what advice would you give to branded merch businesses in 2025, knowing that, we're gonna basically 10x print on demand? We're going from, you know, I think it's projected to be 13 billion this year to 100 billion plus by 2035. I forget the statistics on e-commerce, adoption, but I think it's over 20% in the US now, and that's, growing at a similar exponential rate. But what would be some of the key bullet points on, for these types of businesses to really thrive in kind of the next phase of branded merch?
It's a great question. So always having good, better, best in a print on with especially with print on demand items. If it's drinkware, it's a good is 11-ounce mug, a better is a tumbler, and best is a brand. So I have no problem. I think it's great that you have all three of those items on. Same with a T-shirt. Good is the 5,000, better is a 3,001, and and the best is a Nike or some branded item that people can relate to. I know this from historical statistics that the good is going to outsell every single other one, and so trying to have a sophisticated site that only has what you deem is to be what people are going to want. And it reminded me to tell you a little story where I learned that lesson. But yes, you want to have the good items on your site, and as a product curator for these sites, you want to make sure you might have the best intentions that today's trends are, whatever it might be, the latest and greatest T-shirt or latest and greatest hat or any of those items. But if you only have those items, it's not going to be a successful site.
Right.
Historically, I've seen that over and over and over again. I also think that you really need to focus on the product selection and also updating it. So the nice part about working with companies that do have a little deeper offering is that if you open up a B2B store, and I'm focused on B2B, and I've seen it where the B2B store doesn't change for a year.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason it doesn't change is because they've inventoried all those items.
Right.
And because they've inventoried, they're not going to take it off the site because they have it on inventory, and what a waste. So that's why the print on demand comes in to complement those sites. Is you can add an item, put it up, run a special on it,
Totally.
make the store seem fresh, make the store seem managed. Because if you just go and throw 500 items in a store and that's it, it won't be successful.
Yep.
Over and over. I'm sure you've seen the same thing. So my
Yep.
biggest piece of advice is have an on-demand category, and in that on-demand category, consistently update it with refreshed art, refreshed logos, refreshed things, whatever it might be. But it can still complement your overall offering. And I'd also keep the offerings minimal. I think that when you have too many items, it's like going to any large e-com site now, a direct-to-consumer site, and ones who've been around for 10 years. You can't find anything on the sites anymore because they've just added and added and added
Right.
items. So
Right. Right.
keep it fresh. I mean, and have that on demand, because if you're not updating, the site's not going to do well. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've seen. I mean, I know you've seen it. We both have seen it. And also keep your supply chain. The nice part about technology now is that the supply chain, where years ago when you had a platform and you were building it on that platform, you were only able to sell what they had. Now with
Mm-hmm.
the platforms, how many connections can you have? Hundreds of companies that are doing this now, and so why not connect to as many as you can, because that there might be a product that on there that you're going to want to use. And so I think don't limit yourself to a one source supply chain. I think it's
Well,
important.
yeah, and I think that I mean it's amazing to see just really, I mean, even in the last 5 years, but especially the last like 10, 15 years, how the supply chain for this type of product has matured and evolved. I mean, all of the components. I mean, the blank suppliers, right? Your Sanmars, your Alpha S and S's. I mean, I remember when we when we went from zero to, I don't know, thousands of t-shirts a day at Teespring, like we were trying to plead with Broder Brothers at the time. And before they all like consolidated, and we were trying to get them to understand that we needed to have like sub accounts for our for our decorators, and there was all these things like that were not compatible with print on demand. And so to see how that's evolved, right, and how they've now have all this product distributed across all these warehouses, and for especially for your bread and butter items, you can pull same day, next day. And there's lots of different ways you can pull these products in. On the decorator side, I mean, just a massive uh, evolution there. I mean, going when I started, kind of farming out print on demand work, there was like two or three options in the United States that, for DTG, that had any level of like, capacity or API integration. Now there's dozens, if not hundreds, and now we're starting to see the traditional decorators, adopting this technology and being able to participate in the space. So yeah, just the way the supply chain has evolved, has kind of leveled up quality, consistency, capacity. And so I think, like, yeah, when you say like kind of like the bread and butter basics, I think from a product category perspective, absolutely. But there's still a lot of variety, that you can achieve within that. And then I think also, to your point about, um, kind of refreshing the products, um, the breadth of products that are available now in the supply chain allow you to do things like, hey, the holidays coming up. Maybe we want to add, green, crew neck sweatshirts, right? For ugly Christmas sweaters, or Christmas sweaters, and ornaments, and all these other things that are now possible. You don't need to have 200 different options on the site. But yeah, just being able to constantly kind of like refresh the product categories based on seasonality, or other things that might be happening specific to the customer. And then obviously the variable data that goes on those products, the printing or the stitching, or the decoration, kind of refreshing that constantly is another great strategy.
100%. It's just it is vital to the stores. I mean, you and I, we walk into brick and mortar, they change seasonally, and as a brick and mortar store changes, so should your store. And what better products to do it with than items that you can get on demand? Maybe they'll run out. You can move your supply chain around. I mean, it's just the technology allows for that. But the reality is, I think you'll definitely have a deeper inventory and print on demand than you'll ever get in a fulfilled item, overall, and over the time that you're running a store. So it's an exciting time. It's just
Yeah.
fun to see. It's fun to see the B2B side start really embracing it. I do have a
Hmm.
challenge though. I think one thing I would love to see, and I've brought this up. When I when I was doing my road tours back in 2015, I launched, Custom Color, and I'd go out, and one thing I always would talk about was, I'd meet with I'll use the Ford Mustang Club as an example. So
Hmm.
I was up at a BD&A in Michigan, and where they had their office next to Ford. I mean, Ford was their account, and I just like, guys, how can we get, there's 4 million Mustang members of the Facebook club, the Mustang Club on
Hmm.
Facebook.
Yep.
I was like, how come we're not monetizing that? You're working with Ford. Ford powers the site. It's a Ford sponsored Mustang Club. Actually, I'll tell you, here's a story that kind of ticks me off because I gave them a great idea and they ran with it with Zazzle, not me, but whatever. It's okay. Anyway, but long story short is there are tons of them. Cummins Diesel. There's 3 million fans on Cummins, and they all, you don't think in promotional products that you can set up a store that Cummins diesel truck drivers aren't going to want a Cummins diesel truck on their mug
Sure.
with their name on it.
Yep.
And it's just, I haven't seen that happen yet. And I think with all these companies that we work with in the traditional B2B space, there's opportunities abound to go after all that. And so
Yep.
it's a hybrid, it's B2B, but it's kind of direct to consumer as well. Uh, but think about that. If you have the right person with the right mindset to go after that type of business
Yep.
in the B2B, I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait to see it. Because I know it'll be wildly successful. But things like that I think are low hanging fruit, and you can do it with the simplest, mug, Gildan 5000 T-shirt, and Alex, all of that, and that stuff excites me because it's still, even though you and I look at an 11-ounce coffee mug, I'm like, seen them. To a lot of people, that's new. I
Yeah.
did that in when I ran Crystal Impressions. I'd see a 3D engraved crystal, and in my world, and it reminds me to tell you the story, is that in my world, that 3D crystal, seen it, been there, done that. How can anyone get excited? But every trade show I did, I'd see people never seen that before. How's that done? Let me just tell you a little story about thinking I know what's best for a program. We were doing it was a program on demand, QVC. Had the ability to, you'd upload your picture, QVC was doing upload and print with photo. It was a photo gift. This is back in '06. And we were really excited about the program. QVC is like, all right, we're going to sell, because we had done a program with them before with NASCAR, and we sold a ton, thousands and thousands. So they gave us great airtime. We went in with the photo crystals, thinking it's going to be a home run. I made the decision at that time that because I felt a 4x6 crystal would be what the people wanted, because I liked it. It was elegant. I thought it was elegant. I always thought a cube of crystal was, it's they sell it at Walmart. I'm not. It's not. That's not what people are going to want to buy.
Right. Right.
QVC said we need you to bring in 15,000 of these things, as you can imagine, at a great cost. And this is '06. When we sold the business in 2014, we still had 90% of those glass. Because here's the reason. What I thought would sell isn't what the public wanted.
Right.
And so you have to, so it goes back to what we're doing. A simple 11-ounce coffee mug, a simple T-shirt, they're going to sell. And I get upset when I see sites that don't have it on, not because I'm losing business. It's because to see a successful site, those items will 10 times what everything else sells in the site.
Oh yeah.
So what you think is going to sell, and what someone in the C-suite is they're building a store thinks is going to sell, you might have but the guy who's buying it's down in the warehouse,
Yeah.
he may not want it. So just
Yeah.
that's a bit of advice. I think one thing I take away from all of this is do a store. You need to. Every company should have one. I do believe, in my humble opinion, that on demand needs to be part of it. Doesn't have to be all of it. I don't think it should be all of it. But obviously, if you're going to sell some coffee mugs, I'd be like the guy to call. I can give you my telephone number, my email address. I know, but the reality is, don't limit your stores by not having it. And
Right.
I think that's that's the important takeaway from all of us, for all of us, is that
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
bestsellers, bestsellers.
and it's kind of funny because you thought you knew what would sell to consumers better than Walmart, right?
Oh, exactly, right?
Who
Yeah,
who
touche.
might have a little bit of data, and insights on what sells, and I think that's a good that's kind of analogous to, like, if particularly like promotional products distributors. If I'm a distributor, I'm building curated catalogs
Hmm.
for my clients for things that I know they're gonna like because I know them. I think they're gonna like, and I have an opinion that they're gonna like it. And of course, I'm trying to get them to buy the maximum amount of things from me. So, it's not like I'm handing them the whole, you know, Sanmar catalog or the whole Sage catalog or something like that. It's a curated catalog, but it's a curated catalog of things that I think that they want. Maybe they've said that they want. And particularly in like a B2B to C model, where you're creating a store on behalf of a company or an IP or a group of some sort, and then the customers are going to be buying it. That's where you're always going to see the real data on what actually sells. And inevitably, when you look at all the years of data that you were given from district, when we look at, like, I mean, we saw this at Teespring, and I think it's still, mostly true today. When you look at like that 13 billion in print on demand, and what makes up that 13 billion, which is a pretty um pretty huge sample size at this point of consumers. To your point, it's the bread and butter, t-shirt, hoodie, your 11-ounce coffee mug, and you're gonna consistently see these top seller products. And so, I really do think it's great advice for branded merch sellers. Like, one, get into the store game. Two, look for customers that you wouldn't normally go after, like exactly, like the Corvette Club, these types of clients that where the Corvette Club's not going to go in and spend 50 to $100,000 in promotional products orders from a promo distributor, but they if you build a store for them and they publish it to their community, they might sell over $100,000
It's
worth of merch through that
it's
store.
it's it's a simple link. It's not even,
Yeah,
you don't you're not worrying about fulfillment. You don't have
e-
the headaches of, we take
exactly.
care of the tracking, all
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
all the headaches that
yeah,
that
yeah,
traditional fulfillment can have. You don't
yeah.
have. Um,
And so then, you take this mousetrap of like having a store with the bread and butter items, that can be, swapped out very easily, that can be, new designs and collections, but can be created very easily. That's a really great mousetrap that you can kind of rinse and repeat through all these different customer types, because at the end of the day, the majority of the branded merch space, whether that's corporate promo, licensing, like sports and entertainment, intellectual properties, groups and associations, teams, whatever channel you're going after, still only a fraction of that channel is being served through this model. And so it's just about finding that mousetrap and then just aggressively, going into these different channels. And I think that, the channel leaders that adopt that mentality and the technology are the ones that are going to be really successful, over the next 5 to 10 years.
no, I agree. I agree, and in 10 years time, you're going to see the same. You're going to see the same products being successful on those sites.
Hmm.
Yep,
Yep.
and being the, sort of the leaders in volume. Nothing wrong with, new, obviously, but just saying, just don't make the mistake of not trying to put those simple items on, because they will sell. And here's the other thing. You have a very robust supply chain. You start looking at specialized products. It's a more difficult supply chain. You're not guaranteed the volume. So if your design takes off or your store takes off, you might not have enough to fulfill, and then
Yep.
then it looks terrible because you ran out. So
Right. Right.
I can't. If there's one thing in my legacy of all of this that is a key takeaway, is that there is a tremendous amount of business in the items that I do that I haven't even touched, that people don't even know who I am, and and they are selling the items I sell.
Yep.
And my takeaway is that, that even though it seems mundane and boring, I promise you, that's where a lot of business sits. As far as as far as what I think in print on demand, I love the idea of it. Obviously, I've been doing it now. Oh, don't even want to say. I don't know if I can do the math because it's too high of a number for me. But it's just exciting. It's exciting to see people excited about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've seen some other podcasts, and as far as disrupting, and and sort of in embracing and being a change agent, is that there's still tremendous amount of runway left.
Totally.
So we just need to keep at it. I'm just excited. I'm excited to see everyone start to embrace this even more than they currently do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, 100%. I mean, I think in closing, obviously we've got this, I mean, you and I and other people that have kind of been through the early days of print on demand have really been sort of like, we've been talking about this moment for years, waiting for this moment for years. And now the time's finally here where, you know, you can find almost any deal in the space and find a way to leverage e-commerce and print on demand to have a significant advantage. And it really is, blue ocean at this point. So, it couldn't be a more exciting time, in my opinion. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of the types of companies that you talked about, just kind of like pulling teeth 10 years ago, trying to get them to look at this, or either already doing it, or are looking to get into it, or are could would be very receptive to the technology at this point.
Yeah, and I think one last thing that I wanted to mention too, especially with B2B, is that the when we're looking at the B2B and B2B to C, as you mentioned, I remember one of the biggest challenges I'd have is that they wanted everything to ship in one box, for example. Like if
Hmm.
they order 3 items, they need to ship one box. And the reality is, if you look, you fast forward from 2015 to now, is that all these little roadblocks that were put in place to get on demand going in the space have been just systematically removed. And one of them, that the packaging issue.
Hmm.
Guess what? We all buy from Amazon. And you order 3 items to Amazon, they're coming in three
Totally.
different boxes.
Yep.
And it's efficiency. It's crazy as it sounds. If we had to walk across 1 million square feet of our space to go grab an item and make sure it's the right item and then package it all together, it would cost 3 times as much because you have so much labor involved. And Amazon said, no, we're just, and they've set the standard, and people are used to it. So it's like all these little roadblocks that just it just dawned on me when we were talking
Hmm.
about clothing and things like that. Like you have to let a lot of that, what you think you want isn't necessarily what the customers want or expecting.
Exactly.
No,
Right.
no,
Right.
no.
Yeah. I mean, I think pre-COVID, e-commerce was still only like, I think it was like I'll have to fact check this and then post an update, but I think it was like 12 to 13% of retail in the US, which is obviously the largest e-com market in the world, and now it's like over 20. So everybody got used to ordering off Amazon and all these online services. And so as long as you communicate, and say, hey, you're going to get two boxes and or two packages, that's a very normal
Yep,
experience
yep.
for consumers now.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, I mean, this was great, Alex. I think
Yeah, no, no, no.
a lot of fun.
Great. Yeah, great first episode. Very, very honored to have you with us. A little bit of a plug for Chris. You can get most of his print on demand products are catalog items on Tripod now, and soon to be, all of them. We kind of started with, to your point, the bread and butter basics. He gave me his list and said, "Hey, these are the ones to start with." So we did, and so yeah, the most of the products and pretty soon all of the district on-demand products will be available as standard items in the Tripod, standard network items in the Tripod catalog. So if you're looking to to source his product and sell it through stores, that is all fully integrated today. Of course, if you have other needs or wholesale needs, feel free to reach out to Chris. I can't think of a better partner on mugs and photo products.
No, I appreciate it, Alex, and this was a lot of fun. How this all wraps up. But
Yeah, it's gonna
I
be fun.
bullish on the future. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's a great time. So,
Okay.
all
Awesome.
right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks, Chris, for joining us. We will see you all next week, and we're just getting started here. So, have a great week, and we'll be in touch. Take care. Bye.